All right, here we go. So yesterday we talked about a few other explorers. Okay, some from England, some from France. I don't know if you guys noticed, but with the explorers chart, I added more to it as we're going through it. So Mrs. O'Neill was creating, and I was like, okay, hey, how about we add some more of these here? That'd be great. So you guys sure have the skills to add cells. I hope so anyway. If you don't, well, Eli probably knows how to do it. So ask him. Oh, all right, okay, all right. Anyway, so when it comes to these explorers, there are going to be more that we talk about and discuss. Okay, I'm updating the chart as we're speaking, but for some reason it's not meshing right with your what was posted on Canvas. So it's one of those things where you got to add it yourself. Okay, all right. All right, so anyway, here's your bell ringer for today. We're going to keep moving on. We're going to talk more about these more. Jeez. You got to talk about Sir Francis Drake, who was probably one of the most accomplished explorers of the time, and also a war hero for England. So we'll mention about him today, and the Spanish viewed him as this big, awful pirate. What? Pirates? Yeah, we're going to talk a bit about pirates today. And then I want to talk about colonies here. So England's going to establish and set up some colonies here in the New World, which you probably already know about, right? Anyway, next year when you take U.S. History 1 with Mr. Henninger, it's pretty much going to pick up right here, right? It's going to pick up right here. So what we're talking about now, I know we got a lot more to cover, but you're pretty much going to start here, right, next year with U.S. History 1. So that's something to think about. Okay, so don't throw away your notes. Don't throw away your information here at the end of the year. Try to hold on to it, especially for this chapter, as you guys are going to start right at this moment. All right, so there you go. Think about what these explorers were looking for. So there's one thing in particular that they're looking for, they're trying to achieve. Bless you. Seems like you're getting a little worried for this game coming up here on Saturday. Is that so? No, you're not worried. Really? I think this is the first time in my whole life I think Penn State might win this game. I think so. Eli, what do you think? Penn State, Ohio State, who you got? You don't think the other guy's going to do it? I think he's better than Aller. All right. With Aller? No. You're kidding. No. All right. All right. All right. I don't know about that. I guess. Go ahead. Hurry up. Who, Aller? Stinks. He's probably listening to my YouTube video right now as I'm going live. So I better tone it down here. You know what I'm saying? Will Howard's pumped up for it. You see that? Will Howard. Yeah, you see, he's like, oh, I wasn't good enough for Penn State. They don't want me, so. Oh, really? Well, I guess he's fired up for this. He is. We will see how this goes. All right, here we go. Since we have so much talking here, I guess we're ready. Chase, is that so? Are you still working?
Yeah.
Oh, you
I
need,
wasn't talking, I promise.
I was gonna say, I knew you weren't, but do you need another minute?
Text me or I'll be-
Oh, really? Is that so, Maddie?
No,
Oh,
actually.
whoa. We're going to take water.
Yes.
Oh my God.
He was just talking about someone scamming him. You know that?
Oh, yeah, if anybody is getting emails that looks suspicious.
Mr. Bowman.
It's not click on, not click on. I hope you did.
What?
You click on it. Don't do that.
And I failed now.
Why did you do that? We'll get your bell ringer, okay? Well, I did my bell. Great.
First said that big. Next thing I know, I'm looking like I'm losing that.
Yeah.
Well, like, you get one of the information.
Wait,
That's
you
good.
started talking to- Oh.
The kid did it.
I had no idea this was happening. I never did this.
I got one yesterday. I didn't click on it. But this is fun. I really can't read what they're costing.
Yeah, well, this one.
Margaret Lesher.
That's the one I got.
That's someone I feel.
Oh, you must have been that lecture in your grandpa? No. It goes very
Yeah.
well.
So I heard that. Miss Bridgman is to know.
Are you serious?
But it's 2 to 3 hours with $300. Isn't that a little bit? I didn't know that. Ariel, it's 2 to 3 hours with $300.
That was a scam.
It's 2 to 3 hours. with $300.
Hey, tell me Mr. Hennier clicked on the link without telling me he clicked on the link. He obviously did. Oh, who did it?
So did Margaret Lesher.
Margaret Lester did too, whoever that is. All right, here we go. Let's get to it. Chase, you good now?
Yeah.
Do not click on email. Why are you looking at it?
I'm reading. the
Oh,
spam.
you're reading it. All right. All right, let's get to it. Let's get to it. So yesterday we talked about a few of these explorers from England, from France. All right, real quick. Let's review what we talked about thus far. Who started the age of exploration? What country? What country started this all off? Luna. Portugal, yeah, good job. I was mentioned about how Italy, the Ottoman Empire, controlled the Mediterranean Sea for some time. Right, and as we talked about these explorers like Columbus, like Cabot, who we mentioned yesterday, right, a lot of them are from Italy. Why isn't Italy trying to expand? Why isn't Italy looking to explore the whole new world here and find new routes to Asia? Why not? Naomi?
Because they already have trade.
Yeah, good job, right? So they control trade here, so why spend all the money and resources to do so? Anyway, you gotta imagine, a lot of these navigators here from Italy want to try to find these new lands. They want to try to get onto the glory of this aspect of the age of exploration. So they're going and getting sponsored by many of these countries here in Western Europe, right? Like Spain, like Portugal, and even England, right? And their goal is to try to get some claim to fame here, right? Getting written about and talked about for hundreds of years after what we're doing today. Get it? See it? All right, anyway. So that being said, who falls shortly after? Who falls shortly after Portugal? And they find this new route with Columbus's voyage. Spain, yeah, good job. Anyway, so to make sure that there's no conflict between the two countries, what was that treaty called? And set up a line right down the middle of the earth, right down the middle of the globe here. To make sure that there's peace as they're expanding here. Jason, go ahead.
Treaty of Tordesillas.
Yeah, it's the Treaty of Tordesillas. Good job. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Do we sing? Do we sing
No,
later?
No,
Later?
no.
We're recording right now, but we can sing later, okay? All right. Anyway, what's the line called that separated the earth, so to speak? Austin.
The line of deformation.
Mina. The line of demarcation. You would have known if you were listening to the video yesterday. Someone doesn't want to watch the video.
I didn't look at the.
Yeah, I know you did.
I have it.
Yes. Oh, okay. You probably clicked on that email too, didn't you? All right, anyway, the line of demarcation separating the earth, right? You got Spain, you got Portugal, and this is causing tensions between the two. Who devised this treaty? Who set up this treaty between these two nations? Hold on, Kate.
The Pope.
The Pope, yeah, good job. So with the Reformation that we talked about last topic, you gotta imagine as Europe's going through this wave of perspectives of Christianity, the Pope wants to try to spread Catholicism, spread his religion, right? So the only way you can do that is to make sure that these two countries are seeing eye to eye, that they're not odds with one another. Anyway, yesterday, right, and then we talked about these conquistadors, right? We talked about Portugal's expansion around Africa, right? And the great discoveries of that time from Spain to Portugal. All right, with the New World, Spain is conquering it all, right? We mentioned about these conquistadors. We mentioned about their discoveries, along with, man, brutally taking over many of these native civilizations, like the Aztecs, like the Incas. Oh man, it was brutal. In search for gold. Wow, 7 cities of gold. You remember Coronado? Man, all right. Ponce de Leon looking for the what? So they said. What? A fountain of youth? Yeah, okay. Was that true? I don't know, but for some reason, these explorers afterwards thought, you know what, let's try to discredit him. That happened a lot. So they were searching for this fountain of youth, maybe. All right, anyway, we mentioned about Spain and Portugal. What about England and France here? So France, yeah, okay, when it comes to Catholicism, they follow it, sure, but they're not going to sit idle by, right? They're not going to sit and watch Spain advance here in this new land, in this new world, and take all the credit. Right? So England, especially here, think of England. Are they Catholic at this point? No, we mentioned about the English Reformation. We mentioned about Henry VIII, right, Blake? Yes, he mentioned about Henry Tudor and how he said, enough's enough, we're going to break away from this Catholic Church. So with that, does England follow this line of demarcation? Do they follow it? No, they don't care about it whatsoever. So they want to make these discoveries too. All right, so let's talk about these explorers we mentioned yesterday. Who do we have? Who did we talk about yesterday? Wyatt.
Hudson.
Henry Hudson, yes, good job. All right, so he sailed for England. He also sailed for anybody? Anybody? Brody, is this you trying to answer this? Huh? What? Hudson? Henry Hudson? Who did he sail for? England and who? Okay. Okay. That was thrown out of left field. I didn't know where you're going with that. Blake?
Fernando.
Oh my, what are you talking about? Hudson, who did he sail for? England and who?
Columbus.
All right, just forget what they said, recording, I get it, I have to go back and edit this one. Jason? The Dutch. The Dutch. You ain't Dutch, you ain't much. You ever hear that? If you keep saying stuff like that, that's gonna be true. All right, the Netherlands. All right, so the Netherlands. All right, the Dutch. Good. All right, so when it comes to these joint stock companies, we'll mention about. Brody, you got that? All right, so when it comes to these joint stock companies, they're private businesses here that are funding these voyages. So it's not always the crown that has to spill out all the money to afford and build these ships and afford these new exploration. It costs a lot of money, let's face it. And Spain is really draining their finances doing this. And we'll mention more about that here soon. It's going to clash a war between Spain and England, which we talked a bit about already. Anyway, Hudson, what did he discover? Why? Yeah, good job, right? So as you're looking over the northeast part of modern day United States, even close to Canada there, sure. He's looking for a what? What's he looking for? All these explorers are trying to do this. Jason. Yeah, good job, right? So Northwest Passage, Northeast, whatever you want to say, good job. So this passageway that connects the Atlantic Ocean and Pacific Ocean, that's what they're looking for. And as they're going inside these bays and these rivers here, right, they're trying to see if it connects all to the Pacific Ocean. Does it? Does it? No, right? It's not going to happen. So it's one of those things where they're not going to be able to find it, but they think they're getting close, right? So Hudson's a good one. Good job. Sailed for England and who? Audrina? The Dutch. Thank you. Yes, good. All right, who else do we have that we talked about yesterday? Oh boy. Go ahead, boy.
Fernando Soda.
Fernando de Soto. Okay, we did talk about him yesterday when it comes to his land route with Spain. Sure. I forgot to, I guess, review him, but he explored the southeast United States, parts of Florida, Mississippi. Sure, great. We're talking about England now. Naomi. John Cabot. Yeah, good job. All right, so Cabot, he sailed shortly after Columbus, about 3-4 years. That was it. All right, amazingly enough. Anyway, what did he discover? What did he sail and kind of get close to? Go ahead, Jason.
Like coastal lands for England.
Yeah, like Newfoundland, right? He got really darn close to Greenland. He got close to parts of northeast United States and Canada, right? And he's saying that he claimed this discovery. He found this new land here in the northeast region of what we know of the United States, North America. Who actually was there first, though? Audrina?
That's Stanley.
No. Well, they're down in the Central America, South America, but way up here in parts of North America. Cave, the Vikings, yeah. So did they know that the Vikings were there before? No, they didn't. So when it comes to these discoveries, they think they're doing a lot. All right, then we talk a little bit about some of these French explorers, which I know we're running low on time, so I'll bring them up. Anyway, Verrazano and Cartier, okay. Oh, Verrazano, another Italian explorer. You see that? You see that? Jeez. Anyway, so with France, one thing to note about France is that they're getting to the mix a little bit later, right? So as they're joining into this age of exploration, England is already dominating here in the northeast region of what we know as the United States, North America, and Spain is just conquering and taking over Central America and South America. So for France, they're coming into it a little bit late. Anyway, they're going to settle into parts of the Ohio River Valley, moving into Louisiana territory, which we'll talk more about that later. Next year, Mr. Henninger. But you're thinking more internal, right, of the United States. So they're trading a lot with these Native Americans. They're trading a lot when it comes to fur, when it comes to pelts, right? And they're going to bring that back to Europe and make a boatload of money off of it. So France, even though they get to it late, they do claim some territory here in the New World, right? But it's just more internal. It's a little bit tougher to get to, obviously. And their relations with the natives were a little bit nicer, a little bit more friendly. Right, they're not looking to conquer and take over like the English, which we'll talk about, and obviously Spain. Oh man! All right. Anyway, so I did show you guys a little bit about these explorers' travel routes here. So with Cabot, okay, as you can see, it's a little difficult to see up on the board. I get it, but way up here in the parts of northeast region of the United States, North America, right? So there's Cabot. Here's Hudson, like I mentioned. What did I say about Hudson? What happened to him? This was crazy. This was wild. Oh, Brody. Yeah, right. So this guy was pretty abusive, and when it came to pushing his crew members to the extreme, well, he was pretty authoritarian. He was a means of this harsh leader. So it got to a point after many of discoveries. Who did he sail for again? The Dutch and English, right? Anyway, so because he was so harsh, they said, "Hey, enough's enough. Put him in a life vessel, kick him off the ship, and we'll see what happens to him." But seriously, no one knows what happened to him. He's off his own boat, right? So you got to imagine, maybe I don't know, he might have hovered around here in the parts of modern day New York. No one really knows. Kind of strange, wild to think about. All right, Verrazano, okay. So Verrazano, like I mentioned, he hovers around the east coast of the United States, making his way down pretty much here to South Carolina, right? Making his way back. Cartier, okay, he was known for really sailing deep internally of what we know of modern day Canada, northeast region of the United States, down the St. Lawrence River, okay? And again, trying to find this Northwest Passage. All these explorers looking for this Northwest Passage. If they can find a connection with the Atlantic, the Pacific, that means a lot of money. Controlling a trade, that's huge. All right, is there any questions after? All right, Sir Francis Drake, probably the most accomplished and successful explorer of the time. All right, I say that because he actually does sail around the world and makes it back with his crew, right? So one of his main and major accomplishments is that he actually followed the route of Magellan, but actually went way up further here into parts of the Pacific Ocean, reaching up into the northern part of South America, Central America, all the way up into modern day California. And you can see kind of like Washington, Oregon, modern day Washington, Oregon. That's amazing. And then he sails across the Pacific Ocean, gets to right around the Philippines, right like Magellan, and continues his path, right? So with Sir Francis Drake, he's the first Englishman to accomplish this. And yeah, if you want to say it, I mean, he was the captain. He actually did it, right? Magellan, even though his crew members made it back, Magellan didn't make it back. Sir Francis Drake did. That's something to think about. All right, so when it comes to his discoveries, when it comes to his accomplishments, he's pretty much second to none, right? He accomplished this move all the way across the world. So like I mentioned, he does follow the same route, similar route of Magellan, okay? But he makes his way up way further up here into the parts of the Pacific Ocean, makes his way up into parts of North America, and makes his way across the Pacific Ocean. All right, one thing too, which we'll talk about towards the end of this topic, is that Spain and England, obviously, they're fighting over disputed land. They're fighting over land here in the New World, right? As they're doing that, eventually there's going to be a war. There's going to be a conflict. and these two countries are going to be at odds with one another. All right, so whoever wins this war, right, defeats the other's navy, right, they're going to have the ability to expand even further and claim even more land when it comes to colonization. So Sir Francis Drake was actually a big part of the Spanish and English war here that starts right around the late 1500s. Okay, obviously England does win, right? So they defeat the large, massive Spanish Armada, right? So when they write about the Spanish Armada, their ships were massive, they're huge, and it was really because of the riches that they're bringing back to the New World, right? No one really could compete with Spain's navy up to this point, but England does, right? And the reason they do is because they come up with these strange, wild tactics, which I'll save to the end of the topic. I'll save to the end of the chapter here. Anyway, they have lighter ships, faster, more maneuverable. So when you're obviously fighting up against something that's much larger, it's going to be obviously harder for them to target a fast moving ship. They actually use some, I don't know, they light their own ships on fire and ram them into the Spanish ships even before they get out in the English Channel. It's pretty wild. It's crazy. So we'll talk about this war here soon, but he's one of the main reasons why England does win. He's very successful. He comes up with some of these strategies and plans that are off the cuff, right, so to speak, and he wins this conflict. One thing to note about some of his accomplishments, as you can see, he's a Sir, okay, so he was actually knighted by Queen Elizabeth I. So you want to write that down, that'd be great. So Queen Elizabeth I actually comes up to his ship after this defeat of the Spanish Armada, after he defeats the Spanish Armada, and says, hey, your accomplishments are far and wide, obviously, with England here in this age of exploration, and you sailing around the world, right? No one can compare. So she comes on to his ship and knights him. So that's unheard of, right? Obviously, when you do this, a lot of times you go to the queen herself, but she came to him, right? Which goes to show her leadership, right? And how she was very respectable to many of these figures of the time. And again, Shakespeare, we talked about him a bit and how that was bringing a culture to England, but for Sir Francis Drake, him, right, defeating the Spanish Armada and sailing around the world, it's hard to beat that resume. All right, anyway, so one thing to note too is that the Spanish called him the dragon, right? So the Drake, I don't know if you ever heard of a Drake before, but obviously his last name, but they call him Dragons, Drake, sure. Anyway, the dragon, they called him this because he was a skilled pirate. A lot of these English sailors and explorers were actually pirates. I know that sounds wild and crazy, but they did everything they could to try to stumble and stop the Spanish loot that was making their way back from the New World. So their goal, for the most part, when it comes to a lot of these settlements and these colonies that will be later established in the New World, England was using it almost as a port so that they could stop and intercept many of these Spanish ships that were carrying gold and silver from the new land. So yeah, a lot of these English explorers were actually pirates. Pretty crazy. A lot of these colonies that we established were actually set up so that we can continue this pirating. It's amazing. All right, one thing here too I want to note before we get too wild here at the colonies is that when it comes to America, the name America actually comes from a map maker or a cartographer. Okay, so as the New World was being discovered, as Spain was obviously leading the way here with these discoveries, obviously Columbus, sure, right, and stumbling across the Caribbean islands, the Bahamas, South America, North America. Again, Columbus thought for a long, long time it was the outer rim here of Asia, but it comes to a point where Amerigo Vespucci, okay, who was also there wasn't a lot of proof that he actually went out and explored a new land. There's some records of maybe him taking these voyages to the Caribbean islands and South America. Some say he actually discovered South America. It's hard to say. There's not a lot of sources out there. But he is famed for creating detailed maps of this new land. This new land mass that's out here, obviously before Asia. And he realizes and recognizes that it's not the outer rim of Asia. No, it's something totally different. Right, these two continents, even though we've been talking about their exploration here for a bit, maybe I should have put the slide way further in, but I just want to make sure you guys know where the America's name comes from. So Amerigo Vespucci, right? Obviously, he was a cartographer, okay? He was actually very close friends with Columbus. And as Columbus would come back and tell him about these discoveries of these new lands, again, Columbus thought it was India, the outer rim of Asia. He's like, no. I think it's something totally different. So it's one of those things too, where, like I mentioned, did he actually explore himself? There's not a lot of proof to it, but some say he actually made these voyages here to the New World as well. And that's how he kind of made more of an accurate look of these maps, an accurate look of the new continents and the new land that was found. Again, I hate to say, oh, conspiracy theory, I don't want to be that guy, but there's not a lot of sources out there to say that he actually did this. So we're just gonna put a disclaimer there, because maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But again, when it comes to the Americas, it is named after Amerigo Vespucci. Can you imagine if they would have called it North America, South America, what? United States of America? What do you guys like that? I don't know, it sounds a little strange. Anyway, so when it comes to the naming the new continents, they named it after him because he made these detailed maps of what the new landmass looked like. It was pretty accurate too for the time. Obviously a little bit different, and he didn't know really the full extent of these land masses, but in any case, he gets the name. So the Americas, how does it change? Well, pronunciation over time, and also, well, they wanted to try to make the Americas seem more feminine. You guys ever, when it comes to Spanish class, la and l, so la is more obviously feminine tone when it comes to Spanish language. But at the same time, when it comes to the Americas, they wanted to make it seem more like Mother Nature because it's supplying so much resources, so much goods, and they wanted to give it more of a feminine tone. So that's how it gets to the Americas rather than America. Thank God, right? Thank God. All right, moving on here. All right, so English colonization. All right, so as England is taking over, right, the parts of the new, obviously northeast region of the United States and moving into parts of Canada, as they're dominating these land masses here, well, colonies will be starting to set up, right? One thing to note, by the late 1500s, as Spain is conquering much of Central America, South America, and as this war comes to a close between Spain and England, England does win. Right, so as England wins, they control the seas. Right, Spain isn't going to just give up their colonies yet. Right, it's going to happen sooner or later, but not just yet. They're still going to have control of much of this land in parts of Central and South America. But England now has full reign. Right, like I mentioned, for some of these colonies, like Roanoke, I'm sure you've heard of Roanoke before, the Lost Colony. Anybody? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. 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 Anyway, so when it comes to Roanoke, Sir Walter Raleigh actually set up this colony on the outer fringe of like the Virginia area as a means of piracy, right? So that was one of the main reasons why this colony was set up, right? They wanted to try to establish a colony to make sure that they can intercept a lot of these Spanish ships that are bringing back gold and bringing back silver. So yeah, a lot of these English explorers, like Sir Francis Drake, like Sir Walter Raleigh, were actually pirates. Jeez. All right. So the goal was to take as much silver, as much gold from these Spanish ships as possible. A way to intercept. So that's something to think about with the English. Anyway, what else did they try to do? Obviously, spread Christianity. All right. So when it comes to the God aspect of the age of exploration, those 3Gs, that's one of the reasons too. So you had gold, sure, but God as well. They want to try to spread Christianity to the new land, to the new world. England obviously has a different twist right now that we talked about. Right, they obviously aren't going full Catholicism, right? I know it transitions with Mary Tudor, which we talked about last topic, but right, the whole goal here is to try to spread religious beliefs here to the new land. All right, also, okay, when it comes to converting the Native Americans, the Indians, so to speak, right? That's what the goal was. But again, one of the main reasons too for England getting involved in the northeast region of the United States, modern day United States, of the Americas here, is because they're looking for this passageway, right? That's the main goal. So a lot of these discoveries actually happen here in the Chesapeake Bay region. You guys know what I'm talking about, the Chesapeake Bay region? Okay. So a lot of these discoveries happen around there because it goes deep, deep far in to mainland United States. So they travel the bays, they travel the rivers, trying to find this connection with the Pacific. Obviously, they're way off, they're way far away, but I think they're getting there. All right, anyway, with Roanoke, the interesting lore around it. Anybody know? What do we know? Elena, go ahead. Yeah, on the tree, right? Yeah, do you guys remember what it said on the tree? Jason. Croatoan, yep, good job. Anyway, so that is the mysterious lore around it. As Sir Walter Raleigh sets his first expedition there, right? He tried to set up this colony. There's a few of them that obviously are there, trying to establish it. And he goes back to England and comes back and it's gone. It's gone. Where are all the settlers? Where are all the English people? No one knows, right? No one knows. And the only thing they could find on the tree was crow, right? So when it comes down to it, people are wondering what happened. Were they killed by the natives? Maybe, maybe. But there are also a lot of reports that they actually just combined with a lot of the native tribes, that they just kind of merged with these native tribes. As there are a lot of reports that some of these Native American children had blonde hair and, you know, obviously a whiter complexion. So yeah, you gotta imagine they just kind of combined with the natives, probably, or maybe just killed. No reasons for sure. But it's this mystery that is talked about for so long. All right, anyway, like I mentioned, Roanoke, main thing though, pirating, what? Okay, next one, I'm sure you guys know about Jamestown, right? Jamestown. So 1607, right, when it comes to establishment of this new colony, this new land here, Virginia, we'll talk about the Virginia colony, named after who? Named after who? We talked about this, Naomi. Yeah, Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, right? Anyway, so when it comes to Jamestown, the successful, right, first successful permanent settlement of the English in a new land. What was the first settlement though? You guys remember? Chase?
The one in Florida.
The one in Florida, good job. It wasn't even by England, right? It was by Spain. Remember what it was here? Go ahead, Naomi.
St. Augustine.
St. Augustine, yeah, good job. So for gold, setting up a military base. Is that where Paul Stanley? Yes, the Fountain of Youth. Why? Yeah, okay. Anyway, with Jamestown now, we all know this, right? When it comes to this first successful settlement of the English, right? So 1607. This happens years after St. Augustine. But anyway, with Jamestown, the whole goal, same thing. Pirating? Yeah, what? Geez. And also at the same time, look for gold, riches, valuables, and convert more natives to Christianity. So religion definitely played a huge role in it as well. All right, one thing here too is that they settled on a swamp, right? A swamp. So when it comes to this settlement, it was doomed to fail from the very beginning, right? So as they were building up these fortifications, as they're building up their homes, it constantly was getting overrun by water, and it wasn't great. So drinking water was very difficult to come across, food, resources, you name it. So a lot of these early settlements, well, they barely were holding on. They're barely looking to survive. But in any case, for Jamestown, it eventually would work out, right? Thanks to the help of the Blackfoot tribe, right? And I'm sure you guys heard the story with Pocahontas. John Smith, not John Smith, right? So when it comes to John Smith and this relationship with Pocahontas, not very true, right? Pocahontas did save him from getting killed by Pocahontas again, right? The leader of the Blackfoot, sure. But at the same time, John Smith was much older than Pocahontas. So this relationship wasn't really a thing, even though Disney tried to make it a thing. Sounds crazy, sounds wild. Anyway, with Jamestown, it does become successful. A lot of it because of a cash crop. What is this cash crop? Fruit? Tobacco, good job. So with Roanoke, yeah, they kind of come across this tobacco too, which really sets up the means of, hey, there's a cash crop over here in the new land. And then Jamestown will continue that path, continue that movement to try to create as much prosperity and wealth as possible with tobacco. Right, there will be other resources too, like indigo, right? Like cotton eventually, sure, but tobacco is one of the main reasons here. We see England really diving into these settlements and these colonizations, spending a lot of money to do so too. All right, that's all we got. I'll talk more about the Pilgrims appear more tomorrow. Right, that's going to set the stage for religious freedom, religious expansion. All right. Okay. Yeah.